Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time it is there where you are watching this video. It is Alex again, and yes, I am making another video of SQL. I figured I'd go ahead and show you all how to do this from scratch. I have downloaded SQL Server, Microsoft SQL Server 2017. I've also downloaded SQL Server Management Studio, which is the IDE that you will need to interface with your SQL Server. It's the best IDE out there to interface with SQL Server by far. So I've gone ahead and launched SQL Server Management Studio. We're going to do of a little bit of querying today. And so I've got a couple of databases already set up here, but I'm going to create a new database from scratch, and I'm going to base that off of excuse me, I'm going to base that off of the BikeStores database. So what we're going to do in our database is we're going to right click on our database and say new database. I'm going to give it the name of BikeStores. BikeStores, like so. And that gives us this database here. There are no tables in here, they're just default tables. So I've gone ahead and downloaded a copy of the BikeStores schema build and table build. And all it is a SQL Server file, or script we call them. And what this SQL Server script does is it goes through and it creates all of the different tables that are in the BikeStores database. And you can download these from SQLServerTutorial.net, or, which is a great place to learn about SQL, or you can download them from the GitHub repository that they reside on. So once you have the script open, you're going to hit F5, and then that will go through. If I come over here and refresh, that will go through and it will create all of the tables that I need for my sample database. Now, I'm going to open up this other file, which is going to do all of the inserts of data into my particular table. So I'm going to go, we'll talk about some of the layout of these. These are all inserts. So I'm going to hit F5 here. And here we go. All of our records are in there. Our rows are in our tables. So I can close these. And I'm going to go ahead and right click on here on the database name and say new query. So we're going to test out our query. So I'm going to do a very simple select statement of one of these tables. Select count of star from sales order dot order items no lock. And when I hit F5, that's going to give me the number of records in that table there. Now you might see this little squiggly line here, but if you get a query back, what you can do is come over here to edit and go down to your IntelliSense and just say refresh local cache. What that's doing is any SQL statements that you have out there, it's going to refresh that so it can see all of the new object names that you've created, all the tables and all that kind of stuff. So here we go. You see the little red squiggly line is gone, and I have 4,700 rows in our table. I'm sorry, I keep yawning and I'm muting myself. All right, so this is a very simple select statement that does an aggregate function of counting the number of all the rows that are in this particular table. So let's break this down. Let's break this command down into its parts here. So the first word is always going to be your keyword of what you're going to do. You can select, You can insert, you can update, you can delete, you can truncate, you can drop, you can alter. They're all, there's a list of a number of different keywords that you can use, but usually the first word that you put in there is what you're telling the SQL Server to do. In this instance, I'm telling SQL Server with the select statement or the select keyword, I'm telling SQL Server, hey, I want you to go out and look at the number of things I'm about to tell you to look at. Okay. The second one, and let me actually put this in here like so. Okay. Make that no lock. All right. The next part of this particular statement is what am I looking for? What exactly am I looking for in the table that I'm going to be querying? If I want to look at specific columns in the table, or I want to look for specific rows in the table, then I can specify that here. The from keyword identifies that the next thing that you put down is where you're going to look for the data at. You're going to say, so these three right here, you're saying, give me all of the rows and the star other or the um, I was going to say ampersand. The asterisk here, that is a key wildcard telling you or telling SQL, I want everything. Give me it all. Give me every column in the table. And this from says, give me every column in whatever table you put here. So from says, where am I getting the records from? Right there. I'm getting them from my sales dot order item underscore items table. The sales part here is just a schema that helps you organize your data, right? It says, okay, I want all my sales information to be in a certain schema. I want my production information to be in a certain schema. It just is a different way to organize all of your data so that you're in the same, you can identify it a lot easier just by looking at it. Just by looking at it. Order items obviously is the name of our table. And then this no lock keyword, what that does is if you have a very long running query on the table and you've locked the table or you've locked rows in the table, it means that you're looking actively at the data right now. Well, if you don't put the no lock on there, then what that does is it locks everybody else out of the table while you're looking at the table. So what no lock does, it says, I want to look at these records, but I don't want to lock the table. So that gives everybody else the ability to go pull from the same table that you're pulling from. And it doesn't lock the table and it doesn't cause issues with connecting to a database that is locked. So that's basically this whole statement in a nutshell. Now, inside each table, there are columns in the table. And you'll see over here that there's a little key next to that one. That is saying that that particular column in that table is what's called a primary key. Every row in a table should have some sort of a primary key that makes that row unique in the table. You don't want to have duplicate rows in the table because then you get funky results back. So in this instance, in this table, the primary key is this brand ID, and then there's a brand name. Primary keys also serve a different purpose. What they do is they can help you uh, tie a relation to other databases. So somewhere in this database here, I can look up, and there should be a brand ID in here somewhere. Oh, there it is right there. So this brand ID as a key ties to this column here in the production.products table. This is what's called a foreign key constraint. So it's letting you know that, hey, this foreign key is a primary key in another table. That way you know that this column should always be unique in this particular table and in this particular table. So if I look up a brand ID in this table, I should only be able to find one row in this table that for that brand ID. Here's another one. Here's another key constraint in this column, this category ID. And so if I look in here, there's category ID right there. So that means all of the category IDs in this table are going to be unique. They're not, they're not going to be duplicates. So that's what the keys do. So they just draw relationships between different tables for you. And it's a lot easier to organize your data, and you can find commonality between the tables, and it makes it easier to match data from one table to another when you're doing like joins and stuff, and outer applies and cross applies and stuff like that. All right, so let's do a little bit more complex of a query here. So we've got select statements, and select statements are going to be what you're going to use probably the most as you work in SQL, because you're going to do a lot of querying and looking up data for reports, um, to see what kind of data is in a table. There's different things you're going to do, but you're going to write a lot of select statements, and there's different ways to write them. The easiest way is the one that you see here, where you're just grabbing all of the rows. But obviously, the more rows that are in a table, and the larger a table is, the more that query is going to run longer, because it has more rows to look up. So what you can do is you can filter your table multiple ways. You can use the where keyword, and that's what we're going to do here now. Let me get rid of that. And I can say where, and let me go down to the sales order items table and look at the columns. So let's say I only want specific rows back from this table. I want all of the rows that have a quantity between 2 and 4 items. So I can say that I can see where quantity is between 2 and 4. And if I run that, this gives me the rows in the table that have a quantity between 2 and 4, which it looks like they're all quantities of 2. I can also come in here and do what's called an aggregate function, and I can say max quantity as quantity max, and 5 there, and it looks like 2 is the max one in there. So let's say instead of that, let's do the wildcard star, and I can say where quantity greater than greater than 0, and well, let's just look for quantity equals 1 at 5. So we've got a number of records in there that I have a quantity of 1. So this tells us that there are other rows that are in there. So let's just build a more specific quantity, or more specific condition. I apologize. So let's see here. I want to select everything from sales order items table where, and this is a filter. The more you filter, the less of a return set that you'll have, and you get a more specific set of data back. So I can say where order ID equals 1, and so this is a conditional, product ID equals 20, and list price is greater than $500. And if I hit F5, that gives us one item in there. But let's say I didn't care about the price. I come up here, and I've still got one left there. because of the product ID. Let's say I didn't care about that. You see how I get a different value set there? I've got a less filtered value set. I can also put these in a specific order and sort them. So let's say I want to sort by the list price, and I want the largest one on the top and the smallest one on the bottom. I could say order by list price descending. Hit a 5. That gives me the largest price on the top. So you're going to create large queries a lot of times based on what you're looking for. Some are going to be small, some will be larger, but you want to know how to the different ways that you can look data up in a select statement. You can do inner joins where you're joining results from one table to another to get a specific result back. There's cross applies, which are very similar to joins. I should say applies, I should say. There's unions where you're going to create two different queries of data and put them together to create one larger data set. So there's a multitude of different things that you can do using the select statement. So that's the select statement. And we'll get back to that in a minute here. So let me just comment all of that right there. Now, there is the insert statement. So the insert statement puts rows of data into your table. Now, to do that, you have to understand and know what your table looks like and what data is required. Primary keys are always going to be required in the table. Not nulls, things that cannot be null, are always required in the table. You can't insert stuff that cannot be null. So like here's a ship date right here. You see that? It says date equals null. Date is null, can be nullable. So if I did an insert statement, and actually this primary key is not required. Oh, actually it is required. When it says null, it's not required. When it says not null, you have to have it in there. So all of these are not null. Let's see. There we go. There's one with a bunch of nulls in there. So if I look in this sales.stores table, from sales.stores, let's see if there's some null data in there. There's only 3 records in the table. When a field or a column has no data, that makes it null. And you'll see the word null in SQL Server Management Studio. Null means no value. Space is a value. Empty space is a value. Null is no value. And it's treated differently than spaces are. Spaces are actual valued characters. You just can't see them but they are an ASCII character. Space is an ASCII character in memory. So null and space are 2 different things. You want to keep that in mind when you're doing SQL queries and stuff. So let's insert a row into this particular table. So I'm going to say insert into sales orders. And I have to know the columns that I'm inserting. So I need to have store ID, which is a primary key, store name, should say sales.stores actually. Store name, and then with SQL Server Management Studio, when you start typing, you'll get the IntelliSense here. So phone, and then everything else can be null. And I'm going to say the word values, and we're going to put 4, comma. Store name is going to be, let's just call it Walmart or something like that. Now everything that is character data or alphanumeric or varchar or char, something that has letters and numbers in it, you want to have it surrounded by single quotes when you're inserting the data into a table. So like this, marked, and then the phone number, we'll just give it a phone number, 402, and we'll put it in the same format here, 402 555 1212. Let's put it in that format right there. I wonder if is there a space in there? Let's copy that and see what that looks like actually. There is a space in there. Okay, so let's put a space in ours here. Boom. And then end that with the other close there. And now something is wrong because we've got this little squiggly line here. Well, that's because I have the word values spelled wrong. Now that squiggly line should go away. There we go. So if I run that query, say insert, and it says you cannot put an explicit value in identity column in table for stores when identity insert is set to off. So what that means is that I need to take this store ID off of there, because inserts into this particular table are set up to automatically increment this store ID automatically. So I should just be able to do this and hit F5. Oh, you know what? Let me get rid of that. It says I got too many things in there. F5. So we've got a row now. So let's select our rows of data that are in our sales.stores. So we'll do another select statement. Oop. From sales stores, no lock, F5. And now you see we've got our Walmart over there, we've got a phone number, but we have no data in there as well, which is possible. Sometimes people don't have email addresses. Sometimes they don't want to give out their street address. So that is a possibility. So that is doing an insert into a table and then obviously looking that up. In the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to do updates and delete statements. An update statement is when you're going to alter existing data that's in your table. And a delete is obviously you're going to remove that data from the table. So until next time, it's Alex saying practice, practice, practice. And I hope to hear or see you real soon. Bye-bye now.